Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 30th Select Board meeting. If you join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The Select Board has been in executive session since 5 p.m., and now we return back to open session. I'm going to do this public hearing first for the aquaculture license, and then we will be voting on all the administrative notes and licenses before we start getting into the other parts of the agenda. So, aquaculture license for William Marani. Oh, there he is, okay. Is the harbor master here?
I didn't see him.
No, I haven't seen him either.
That was my understanding.
Can you identify yourself for the board?
Oh, certainly. My first name is William, and my last name is Marani. I'm a resident at 253 Standish Ave.
Yeah, I was just going to ask him that.
My first name is William, my last name is Marani, and I am a resident at 253 Standish Ave in Plymouth.
Perfect. And we do have a letter from the harbor master that says, "Dear Select Board, we would like to recommend the assignment of William Marani from the aquaculture waiting list to the one vacant aquaculture site within the Aquaculture Development Zone, ADZ. I have spoken with Mr. Marani, and he's willing to accept the site and is eager to get started with his aquaculture operations. Respectfully, Chad Hunter." Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next is all of the I am going to change the order. So next will be all the licenses, permits, vehicle for hire, poll petitions, Keno, and the administrative notes. Do the board members have any questions regarding any of those? And if not, I look to move them as a group.
Through the chair, I just have to abstain from the minutes.
Okay,
I have a question about the licenses.
okay.
K. Katie's Express in Manomet. There is no 761 State Road, and I was wondering where the location actually is. Anthony was looking into it.
Through the chair, K. Katie's is going to be located where the old fortune teller used to be. It's next to, I believe, it was the Mary Lou's.
Next to what?
Mary Lou's, the building, I think the attorneys are in there as well.
Okay, but it's not in the Mayflower Plaza.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Any other questions? Someone like to move as a group?
I move as a group.
Move it.
Is there a second?
Was that Charlie?
Yeah. Oh, Charlie seconded it.
One of us motioned and one of us seconded.
Perfect.
Just pick.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. So now we get into the first order of business is the Suicide Prevention Month and Day Proclamation. Do we know who's presenting for that? Oh. Okay. Proclamation from the town of Plymouth. Whereas the Plymouth Select Board takes pride in recognizing National Suicide Prevention Day and Month. Whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause of death among individuals between 15 and 24 years of age. And whereas in the United States, one person completes suicide every 14 minutes. And whereas it is estimated that 5 million people in the U.S. are survivors of suicide loss. And whereas an increase in overall suicide rate in our country was seen in 2019, representing a change in the recent pattern of stability or slight declines. And whereas suicide is a community problem and thus must be community response through various initiatives to reduce suicidal behaviors. Whereas the Plymouth Suicide Prevention Coalition, which is dedicated to reducing the frequency of suicide attempts and deaths through education, awareness, and action, urge that we as a community, number one, recognize suicide as a national, state, and town of Plymouth public health problem, and declare suicide prevention to be a Plymouth County priority. 2, acknowledge that no single suicide prevention program or effort will be appropriate for all populations or communities. 3, encourage local initiatives based on the goals contained in the National Strategy for Suicide Prevention that will develop and implement strategies to reduce the stigma associated with being a consumer of mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention services. B, develop and implement community-based suicide prevention programs and suicide bereavement support services. C, implement training for the recognition of at-risk behavior and for delivery of the affected treatment. And D, increase access to and community linkages with mental health and abuse in the entertainment, substance abuse in the entertainment and news media. Now, therefore, a great many suicides are preventable. Therefore, it be resolved that we, the Plymouth Select Board, do hereby designate September 10th, 2022, which overlaps World Suicide Prevention Day on September 12th, as National Suicide Prevention Month in the town of Plymouth, Massachusetts. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to make that proclamation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, public comments. Mr. Cirque.
Good evening, Richard Cirque, Precinct 2. I am here just to ask whether or not a Select Board-sponsored article is intended to be submitted that would seek a home rule petition, the filing of a home rule petition to change the month in which municipal elections occurred. I asked the question only because there was some discussion at the end of the Charter Commission meeting last night that this was contemplated, but I didn't see it on your agenda for tonight.
Mr. Brindisi?
Yes, through the chair. So that article that Mr. Cirque is referencing is to be heard at our next meeting on September 8th.
Okay.
On September 8th,
That's right.
it's going to be a state, it's going to be an article before town meeting, but it's not going to go through the Charter Commission first?
It'll be an article through town meeting.
I think it belongs before the Charter Commission because they're doing extensive work about our form of government, but I'll wait until September 8th.
Thank you.
Good evening. Pat McCarthy, Precinct 18, Town Meeting Member, Vice Chair. I just have a couple of comments to read into the record prior to your next item on your agenda. It's regarding in-person town meeting. It is time to meet in person, and it can be done safely. Events are being held consistently now indoors. Fundraiser events, such as the Habitat for Humanity Gala and the Library Taste of the Town, are scheduled for the fall. The Phil has all their concerts scheduled, and other events are being held at Memorial Hall. Over 800 attended the opening ceremony for the school department at North High. Masks were not mandatory. Citizens have the choice to get fully vaccinated, wear masks, and social distance. In 2020, former Superintendent Dr. Gary Maestes provided information on how we could meet safely inside North High. And I have some bullet points. Use of all of the auditorium and mezzanine for town meeting members. They will have plenty of space. Encourage all to wear masks and be fully vaccinated and do a test before they come. 2, FinCom staff, department heads, and other boards can be in a classroom and utilize the technology of North High to watch the meeting. They can come into the main area to speak on issues and return to the classroom. 3, citizens and guests can watch from the cafeteria and join the meeting if needed. 4, bag lunches could be sold instead of having the cafeteria line. I know that the town can coordinate what is necessary with the school department. Most town meetings in Massachusetts are open, and no one knows how many will come. If those towns can do that in their way, it's way past time for us to meet in person. COVID, unfortunately, in my opinion, is here to stay, and we need to take care of ourselves and others. We have to live with it. I am one of those old people and choose to be careful, but town meeting is one place I will gladly go and stay safe. It is important to have interactions with others on town meeting business, especially with about 50 new town meeting members that only participated in a couple of items in June. They have not even met anybody in person. So I urge you, as a board in the town of Plymouth, to have an in-person town meeting so we can interact properly. Thank you.
Hi, Joe Hutchinson, Precinct 17. Thank you for the time. As you've just heard, this is an ongoing argument. You know, some people say that it's an integrity problem, that the only reliable form of town meeting is in person, and others think that it's a risk management problem and simply aren't willing to risk the health and lives of their neighbors. This is an argument that's been going on for too long, and we just had the third survey on it, and I guess what I really want to say is that I would like to take a look at what the point is, what the goal is, why we are going to town meeting, which is the work of the town. It has very little to do with the venue. Precinct 17 has a caucus every month, and at the most recent one, we discussed how we want to deal with this problem. We are going to be hybrid for those who feel vulnerable, and there are those who feel vulnerable, and in person for those of us who prefer the in-person experience. I think that both venues provide valid outcomes. There's no evidence so far that in-person versus that town meeting has failed in any way from having been virtual. So the town's on a path to a solution. We have a petition in front of the legislature for a hybrid town meeting, and that'll give us the flexibility that we need to have either hybrid or virtual or some variant. So that's actually the model that we're working toward. And in Secretary Galvin's town meeting handbook, he lays out the work, and we can do the work in both venues. So, in a nutshell, I'm having to edit here along the way. Caucuses, in person, we can make improvements to both along the way. So, I believe that having a caucus every month, that having frequent caucuses is preferable to just a single caucus or even maybe two just before town meeting. I think that we ought to be keeping up at caucuses along the way, keeping up with Kevin and the FinCom and participating at that level, at the caucus level. So if you want in-person experience, that's the way to have it. That way you can discuss among yourselves whether you want a mask, whether you want a distance, how you want to do that. We can also have major improvements, I think, to the virtual environment. We're not the first organization to have to deal with COVID and related. The churches, I am told, have found great solutions for this. And we should go out and ask, well, what are the improvements that other folks have made, and can we make them for our environment as well? They can do chat, they can do captions, expand the online volunteer staff, test the environment. There are a number of improvements. I've talked to Mr. Trifoletti about this, and he agrees. So just as a summary, I urge us to work in both venues toward improving town meeting on the way to the hybrid that will give us the flexibility that allows us to have a legal town meeting any way we want. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Vaz and then Mr. Golden.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the board. My name is Leonard Vaz, and I'm a precinct member of Precinct 1. I'm the oldest sitting town meeting member, almost 60 years. I'm 90 years old. I have no trouble getting around. I play golf a couple times a week. And it's time to put the Steve Trifoletti Roadshow to bed. We go to Plymouth North High School with plenty of room, plenty of space. You don't have to be sitting on each other's lap. And we can sit there and do business. It's time that we end this virtual town meeting. Thank you.
Go ahead. Excuse me. Hold on, David.
To the chair, the last three commenters they're commenting on the next agenda item.
Correct.
I think it would be best if the moderator presented his case, and then the board would open it up to the public. I'm
Well,
sorry.
it's public comment. I mean, we can certainly do that, or just let them finish. There's one more person, and then Mr. Trifoletti can do his.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, members of the Select Board. I don't know how I follow that. Thank you for your many years of service, Mr. Boz. My name is David Golden, and I currently serve on the Cultural Council, the Menominee Village Steering Committee, and the Board of Health. I'm not here to represent any of those groups. I am here tonight as a town meeting member and the chair of Precinct 7. To begin, I want to bring us back to the events which transpired at Plymouth's special summer town meeting held June 22nd, 2022. The meeting began in its usual fashion with all the customary pomp and circumstance of the occasion. However, as the meeting progressed, chaos soon erupted as technology failed and debate was truncated. Immediately upon the first ballot, it was abundantly clear that the V-voter system was not properly recording our vote submissions, and many town meeting members weren't getting their votes counted. Frustratingly, those members who contacted the support line were told to raise a point of order, but the V-Voter platform also failed to notify the moderator when some of those members attempted to do so. The situation created confusion among members, uncertain of whether their votes were being recorded or not. Little guidance was given by the moderator, the assistant moderator, or the support line staff. Instead of having a streamlined process for recording votes, we were presented with multiple methods to submit our responses. Such an approach is not acceptable. It creates mistrust in the integrity of our votes, and it creates nothing but frustration on the part of the members. Now, I'm sure the moderator will get on in a moment and tell you that we've had 6 successful town meetings using a virtual format. What he really means is that we've conducted 6 expeditious town meetings where business is rushed, votes are hastily taken, and little true legislating is done because we're shackled by our technological constraints. These issues would not impede our proceedings if we were operating with an in-person format. More troubling than the technological turmoil is the fact that there was an attempt to severely limit our ability to fully debate the issues before us from the very first article. As we discussed Article 1, the moderator cut off several members who wished to speak on the motion. When members petitioned to allow their colleagues to continue to speak, the moderator reasserted his authority. We then spent more than 30 minutes discussing whether the town meeting members had the ability to override the moderator's decision. Rather than simply allowing an additional few minutes for the few folks who needed it, the moderator created unrest and furor among members. When finally pressed by the chair of the Committee of Precinct Chairs, who sought to appeal the decision, the moderator recessed the meeting. When proceedings recommenced, additional time to debate was thankfully granted. However, much time was wasted. Moreover, dozens of members complained that the V-Voter platform seemed to not be working when they attempted to register to speak. The lack of transparency regarding the speaker's queue disturbed members. Once again, these issues would not be present if we were permitted to join the speaker's queue in person, nor would the moderator's unfettered control of debate be allowed to waste so much time. Another town meeting will soon be upon us, and the moderator is here to tell you that the ongoing dangers of the pandemic will once again prevent us from having an in-person session. At the most recent Board of Health meeting, I asked the moderator if his intention was to host the meetings virtually until such a time as there is a hybrid option available to us. The moderator confirmed that that was indeed his intent. He informed the Board of Health that should the request for a virtual platform be denied, he would continue the meeting indefinitely until the pandemic situation changes dramatically or a hybrid option becomes available. However, he can't tell you what he means when he says that dramatic change needs to occur in order for us to be safe. Instead, he'll equivocate by telling us that he's not a scientist, and then he'll follow that up by a litany of sources, such as his friends, his brother, and his clients from his law practice, upon whom he relies to make his determination. I posit that the anecdotal data obtained from the moderator's family and friends is insufficient, and we should instead make decisions based on the realities of our community. Here are the true facts, and I'm nearly done. 1, on February 9th, 2022, the night of that Plymouth's local mask mandate was rescinded, Dr. Barry Potvin, the chair of the Board of Health, reported that there had been 12,847 confirmed cases of COVID in Plymouth. More than 6 months later, at the August 24th meeting, that number had only increased by 1,947 confirmed cases. On the same night, Dr. Potvin reported that there had been 218 confirmed cases, confirmed deaths in the town. That number was revised by the time that the Board of Health met on April 13th and has remained at 205 ever since. The current 7-day average for the number of confirmed cases for the entirety of our county is 73. The 7-day average for the number of confirmed deaths is 0. Only 3.1% of staffed inpatient beds in all of Plymouth County are occupied by COVID-19 patients. The CDC currently lists the entire state of Massachusetts as low risk. This means that there are fewer than 10 cases per 100,000 population during a 7-day period, and that averaged over a 7-day period, fewer than 10% of staffed inpatient beds are occupied by COVID-19 patients. Every county that borders Massachusetts is classified as either low or medium risk, meaning not only are we in tremendous condition here in Plymouth, but we have a huge buffer around us. Lastly, the CDC rescinded its social distancing guidance on August 11th, 2022, noting that much of the population of the United States has at least some level of immunity to COVID-19 due to vaccination or prior infection or both. I'm not sure what metrics the moderator needs in order for us to feel safe hosting an in-person town meeting, but I believe the data I just shared speaks for itself. Given the data and the concerns I discussed earlier, I entreat you who decide on the time, place, and manner of our town meetings to no longer allow virtual town meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Golden. Anyone else, public comment? Okay, then we'll move on to Mr. Trifletti, Town Moderator, Town Meeting Location Discussion.
Good evening and thank you, Chair of the Select Board and also members of the Select Board, also those in attendance. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to participate virtually since you offer all of us a hybrid model, which is allowed under our state law. And as we know, currently in Massachusetts, we're not allowed to do that at the town meeting level. I'm just looking, can you see me?
No.
No, I'm looking for something that'll tell me that I can put the video on, if that's possible.
It's usually a little camera down at the end.
Yeah, there's a little camera next to a little microphone on the left hand.
Seeing the microphone, I'm not seeing the camera. I'm only seeing the microphone. Well, in any event. In June, as mentioned by the previous speakers, town meeting voted for the hybrid. I would note they didn't vote for any other type of home rule petition, but they did vote for the hybrid model. And since that time, I've been in contact with the state to support that. In fact, there was a joint legislative committee of both members from the House and the Senate. I submitted a letter in support, and I've been in touch with the legislative delegation in order to encourage at the state level for the approval and adoption of the home rule petition. Over the summer, as I began to plan for a hybrid town meeting in the fall, we became aware that in fact the hybrid may not be approved by October. And so at that time, the assistant town moderator conducted a survey of town meeting members. And the survey was a simple one, asking town meeting members that if the hybrid were not available, what would be the preference? And surprisingly, we had over 100 town meeting members respond, and approximately half, about 50, somewhat town meeting members preferred in person, and another half of 50 preferred that we meet virtually. Since that time, I've met with community precinct chairs. I've also met with the Board of Health in order to get feedback regarding town meeting and whether or not to proceed with, once again, remote participation, which is allowed by statute. And one of the issues that really has continued is that there is risk. When I met with the Board of Health, the chair said there's obvious health risk for a meeting in person. Another member, Dr. Reed, said there are risks. We have to weigh the cost and the benefit as we do in medicine. Another member, Ms. Lorenzo, said, which is more inclusive since there is a risk. And I could go on with all the members of the Board of Health as their comments, but I am also guided by Massachusetts law, in specifically Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 39, Section 10, which says in pertinent part that whenever the moderator determines that voters in attendance are being deprived of the opportunity to participate therein for any reason whatsoever, then the moderator shall, and it's mandatory, not directory, the moderator shall, on his own motion, recess the meeting and adjourn the same to another date, not later than 14 days, until we can accommodate the voters attending and enable them to participate. Therefore, after listening to people, and I heard what Mr. Golden had to say, and to some extent, I understand what he's saying about anecdotal evidence or data. I mean, he asked me at the Board of Health what the metrics were, and I think I told him, taking out of context what he said tonight, I think I told him I don't have metrics because I'm not a scientist, nor was I voted as moderator for that skill set. But what I do know is that there are town meeting members who have said that they are at risk and that they will not participate if it's in person. So then I look at the statute and determine that there are some town meeting members who are not going to be able to participate. And I listened to some of the other comments, and what Pat McCarthy said was certainly very valid, but when she cites some of the other events, they're not governmental meetings. They're not filled with voters. And that's really the difference here between other gatherings in the town. Aside from town meeting, all other governmental meetings in the town can be by hybrid. And so people have the opportunity to participate, to vote, regardless of whether or not they're in person. But that's not true for town meeting right now. So when I listen to Mr. Hutchinson, he speaks to the risk, but he also is concerned about fellow town meeting members who are vulnerable. And that's my concern as moderator. When Mr. Vaz mentioned that he was the oldest and he's 90, well, I happen to know another town meeting member who's 90 who feels vulnerable and would not come in person. So there are different points of view, and I understand and respect the different points of view. But in the end, I've got to make a decision about whether or not under the statute, there's going to be anyone deprived the opportunity to participate for any reason whatsoever. And I've determined, based on the ongoing risks of the COVID pandemic, that there are town meeting members who will be deprived the opportunity for any form of in-person, and their only way to eliminate all risk is to have it virtual. And so I'm asking the board tonight, once again, to schedule this under the statute that allows us to do it by remote participation. And further, I'm indicating that if for any reason this time the board does not wish to proceed in that manner, then it is my intention on October 15th to then continue town meeting 14 days at a time until such time as a hybrid model is approved for us to continue hybrid, or until such time as the select board then is in agreement to proceed virtually. And I'm doing this based on the statutory authority, but also the statutory responsibility that I have as a moderator to assure that everyone who's a voter, a town meeting member, has the opportunity to participate at town meeting. Thank you.
Fleddy, board members? Harry?
First of all, Mr. Trifletti, I would like to point out that a threat is a threat, regardless of the background. And I've said this before, I don't like being threatened. I don't know about the other board members. I don't know about the residents of Plymouth, but I doubt very many of them like to be threatened. Question for you, in the 6 previous town meetings, has there ever been an attempt to seriously look into the possibility of having an in-person town meeting and those people who felt uncomfortable to have special seating conditions so that it could be taken place in person? As Mr. Voss pointed out, Plymouth North High School auditorium is a pretty big place. Has there been any serious research into this?
Thank you, Mr. Helm. Certainly in the past, as Patricia McCarthy mentioned, there has been discussion about what could be done to provide alternatives. But in the end, it comes down to, is there still going to be risk? And there is going to be risk. There's going to be risk for people. You increase the risk with the more people that you have. So smaller gatherings obviously are different from large gatherings. And I just would also want to respond to your comments about threat. It's not a threat at all. I'm merely giving advance notice to the board, to town meeting members, and to the community that because of the statutory authority and the responsibility that I have, and given that we have an ongoing pandemic, given that town meeting has voted for hybrid, and we have substantial number of town meeting members who have said they want to be virtual if they can't be hybrid, it's my responsibility to take all of these factors into account. And for that reason, that's why I've determined that it's appropriate to request, once again, that we have a town meeting by remote participation. And further, because I was told last week when a letter or an email went out that your board wanted in person, I wanted to clarify to everyone that the moderator does have authority to recess town meeting from time to time if in fact it's determined that voters are deprived the opportunity to participate for any reason whatsoever. And that's really the issue. Will all 162 town meeting members be afforded the opportunity to participate, or would one of them be deprived? And even if one were deprived, that's a concern.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that lengthy explanation. But I would like to point out to everybody, in case you missed it, there was no answer to my question. There has never been a valid attempt to actually look into having it in person and keeping people safe at the same time. So thank you for answering it by not answering it. And I would also just like to point out once again, you know, I'm sorry, Mr. Trifletti, but a threat's a threat.
Okay. Mr. Blitzer.
Yes, Mr. Trifletti, I got a question for you. The last meeting, not 162 members were there. Is there a possibility that some members couldn't participate because they're technically challenged and they can't do the Zoom? And if so, that's a problem right there. By having the remote, they wouldn't be able to participate. So,
thank you. That's a good question. We have worked with town meeting members at every virtual town meeting. We have provided for training. We provided equipment. People have gone to the home of town meeting members if that were needed, or there's been the opportunity for tech buddies at Plymouth North High School. So the issue of the technology and being able to participate remotely has not been an issue in terms of denying any town meeting member or voter the opportunity to participate and vote.
well, how about the embarrassment of maybe they don't want to, you know, admit that they're technically challenged, and they might be too embarrassed to participate. So, and also, as far as the in-person, I was, last week I was at church on Sunday. I saw town meeting members there. Some had masks on, some didn't. I was at a comedy show, full house. Some people had masks, most people didn't. So the option in person is if you're worried about the COVID, put a mask on. And I think that's proven that that's effective. And so, you know, I think it's time, and I said it last time when I voted for the hybrid, that, you know, in person is what the people want. I believe it. It's much more effective than the virtual. And I'm voting for in person because, you know, the stats prove it. Mr. Vaz and Mr. Golden, what they said was perfect, was great. The stats show that the COVID is not that much of a threat, that you can't put a mask on and be safe. So, and also, as Mr. Vaz said, that whole balcony in Plymouth North is empty. If you can sit by yourself, you can go in by yourself, sit by yourself if you're uncomfortable being around a crowd. So, like I said, I'm voting for in person. I think it's time that we go back to the most effective way of having town meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Blitzer, we do have, you're correct. There are a significant number of town meeting members that would like in person, but there's an equally significant number that do not want to be in person. And so I'm trying to weigh all of those points of view.
We can't have it both ways. We can't have it both ways. There's no remote. It's either virtual or in person.
Until we have the hybrid, that's correct.
Well, we don't have the hybrid. So right now it's either virtual or in person. And if it's in person, I mean, if it's virtual, there are people and that are technically challenged that are embarrassed to have some high school kid, which I think it's great what they're doing, the support buddies. I think it's a fantastic way to go. And I wouldn't have a problem doing that if I needed it. But there are some people that might be embarrassed, but they're not going to be able to participate if it's virtual. Hello?
Mr. Mahoney.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So like a couple of questions of the town manager. Mr. Brindisi, can you give us an update on the status of that special act request?
Sure, through the chair, that's a great question. I actually had a conversation with Representative Matt Muraturi yesterday morning, and I asked him this question. As we all know, the special legislation was filed late, back in June. It was towards the end of the 2022 formal session. It made it to its second reading. At that point, there wasn't enough time to finally get its approval. So that being said, the legislation will be refiled in the beginning of the next session, which begins January 1st. After talking with him, we don't believe that, again, looking at the time it takes to pass special legislation, that legislation will be approved for the annual town meeting. So, in my opinion, I think the earliest we could see a hybrid town meeting would be October of '23.
Okay, thank you. Has the legal opinion that we got from Cedar and Chandler been provided to the town moderator?
It has not.
Okay. Stephen, the board got a legal opinion from town council, and I'll just go to the second page and just paraphrase some of the comments in the second paragraph. The CDC has reported that Plymouth County's COVID community level is low. This rating reflects the lowest level of COVID-19 risk. Notably, the CDC summary for Plymouth County makes no mention of the need to avoid public gatherings. Rather, it merely states that Plymouth County residents should wear a mask while using public transportation, and that they, in quotations, may choose to wear a mask at any time as an additional precaution to protect yourself and others. As the town meeting is scheduled to take place in a high school auditorium, town meeting members may choose to wear a mask. And there's a couple of other points in there, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. So, this has been going on for 2 years. I think it's time to get back. I'm sympathetic to individuals who are concerned, and I understand that. We need to get back to in-person meetings. Fenway Park is open for business, the Boston Garden. The Patriots are going to start hosting 60 to 70,000 people in a bowl over the course of the next few months. Topsfield Fair, the Big E in Springfield. So there is no doubt in my mind that this, especially with 6 to 7 weeks to go, that we can facilitate an in-person meeting. And those individuals who are uncomfortable sitting in the main body of that auditorium, they can participate somehow and get their votes counted. So I'm looking, I don't know why this is the last holdout with respect to getting back to some sense of normalcy. One of the prior speakers, unfortunately, we're going to be dealing with this probably for the rest of our lives. The number I've always looked at, Stephen, and I've got some statistics in front of me, I believe it was provided by you. I just look at the data sheet from the state, and I look at hospitalizations. And basically, since March, we're currently at 582 hospitalizations across the Commonwealth, or a state of 7 million people. And it's pretty much been fluctuating between 5 to 650 for the last 3 to 5 months. So there's a way of getting this done. You may disagree with Mr. Helm qualifying your comments as a threat. I think certainly it's an ultimatum that I don't want to deal with. 14-day increments holds up this community's ability to do business. I look forward to meeting in person on Saturday, October 15th, and then really getting back at it 6 or 7 months later, back in April. Thank you.
Mr. Mahoney, thank you for your comments. I would say I've certainly not seen that letter, but I have received a letter from Town Council Mark Rich dated August 23rd. And after citing the statute that I related to you, he ends by saying, thus, if the moderator determines that town meeting members are unable to participate, he may determine to adjourn the meeting for up to 14 days at a time. So again, I certainly agree that there are many other gatherings that are larger, but when I listen to the ones that you cite, none of them are governmental meetings. None of them involve voters who have to have the opportunity to vote. And that's really what's at issue here.
But Stephen, can you expand on that? So why does that set the difference as opposed to me sitting in a bowl over in Foxborough with 67,000 other people? How does that increase the probability of somebody potentially getting COVID? Just because they're participating in...
Yeah. So the difference is you can go to Foxborough and you're not one of the 162 town meeting members. We have 162 town meeting members in the town of Plymouth, and it's my responsibility to assure that they can all vote. And I have been told by multiple town meeting members that they will not be able to vote and participate if it's in person. And we also conducted a survey, and the survey results were that half of those responding, approximately 50, wanted the virtual. So while I'm listening to all of these comments, and I agree, I want to be in person, and as soon as there's a hybrid, we'll have that. But until we have the hybrid, we're denying town meeting members the opportunity to vote, because we know that some of them will not participate in person, but they will participate remotely. And that's really the issue here.
Why not?
I'll save myself for last.
Oh, good.
Oh, no, please do.
Ladies for a gentleman.
So I appreciate you coming in front of us, Mr. Trifletti, but there's a few things that we've done research on prior to this meeting. We actually held our own little survey, and we had almost 100 members as well. 63% voted for in-person, 38% voted for remote. Although I do believe that you have authority during a public safety or public health crisis, I do not believe you have the authority now. I mean, I'm not going to support a virtual meeting. I think that, you know, if anyone was around, a couple days ago, the town of Plymouth School Department had their opening day. There was 800 people in that auditorium. So we do have correspondence from our special counsel that will support an in-person town meeting. And like I said, there's a lot of data out there, and I just don't see it. I mean, we completely support the hybrid, and I know we've instructed the town manager to reach out to Matt Moratori and see if there's anything that, he can do to move it along, whether it's not in session. So, but in the interim, I will not be supporting a virtual town meeting. Mr. Quintal.
Good evening. Steve, help me out here. According to our town charter, it gives you the authority to open and then to close town meeting if you feel necessary. Is that correct? Is that by our charter?
I don't have the charter in front of me, but I believe that's correct. But again, the authority that I'm relying on this evening is Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 39, Section 10. And that's the state statute that allows moderators to, upon the start of town meeting, to then, on the moderator's own motion, adjourn the town meeting. So in listening to the chair's comments about the survey, I haven't seen that survey, but again, whether it's 50% or whether it's 38% that want virtual, I'm not going to ignore that number of people that are saying that they don't want to be in person right now. But it's a statute, Mr. Quintal, in which I'm relying, although I know that certainly there's authority in the charter for the moderator as the presiding officer to do certain things, but it's the state statute right now on which I am guided and relying regarding my responsibility as town moderator.
Okay, so it's a state statute.
Yes, and it's not an emergency statute. So previously, when we were first had the shutdown of the pandemic, you may recall, I continued town meeting 5 times at 30-day periods, and so the spring annual that year in April was continued until August, at which time we finally had a town meeting. And that was because we were waiting for the state legislation to be enacted, the enabling legislation for remote town meeting. So that was under the emergency statute, and that was for 30 days of time. Now that there's no longer that emergency legislation, the applicable legislation is General Laws 39, Section 10.
Thank you.
As far as Chapter 39, Section 10, our council states that this section deals exclusively for members who are in attendance and who believe they are being deprived of their ability to participate. So I don't believe that has anything to do with people that don't want to go there to participate. But I guess that's it. So
That's why I asked the question, part of the reason, because I was unclear on exactly which actual law he was, basing his decision on.
right. And if the decision is made that the town moderator decides that they're going to try and postpone it, obviously, town meeting can overrule that by a 2/3 vote. So I think it's just time we get back to business. Anybody else? Any other board members? Any comments from the public? Mr. Canty?
That's all the charter currently says. Read it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Select Board. My name's Kevin Canty. For those that don't know, I'm the chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Our primary purpose as the Advisory and Finance Committee is to prepare town meeting for town meeting by hearing all of the articles that are going to come before town meeting, issuing our recommendations, and also subsequently attending caucuses to assist folks in digesting the large amount of materials that they are going to be deliberating about on the day of town meeting. Since town meeting has gone virtual, it has come to me to make procedural motions to request that town meeting be held in a virtual format. I have done that every time. I have done that particularly at the beginning because back in 2020, there was a time where we didn't know how COVID was spread. There was an extended period where there were no vaccines available. There was a period where masks were not freely available. And it was important that we got the business of the town done at that time. Since then, I have made that motion every time, despite the fact that the overall risk in the community has waned over time. I say that as somebody that is currently one of the only people in this room wearing a mask because of the work that I do and because of family members that are particularly vulnerable. So I am able to participate in my daily life and in my work for the town by assessing the individual circumstances that I am in and balancing what I need to have done in those spaces with the other considerations in my life. And I believe town meeting could do the same. My chief priority is that town meeting occur at the time that it is supposed to occur. The idea that town meeting could be delayed 2 weeks at a time, potentially in perpetuity, until legislation is passed to allow a hybrid format in the event that the moderator won't budge and the select board won't budge, is, in my opinion, an untenable situation that should be avoided at all cost. This is we cannot have the legislature of this town held hostage by the meeting of an unstoppable force and an immovable object, or perhaps more aptly in this scenario, two immovable objects as they may be. Under the statute that the moderator seeks to have a virtual town meeting in this scenario, the select board has to approve it, and the select board has stated, they haven't voted yet, but they've all stated that how they're going to vote. They're not going to vote to approve a virtual town meeting. The last few times that I made the motion for town meeting to occur in a virtual format was primarily so we could get the work of the town done on that particular day. We were all there. We were all logged in. Although there were some folks that didn't want to participate in a virtual format, it was more important that the work get done. It is still more important that the work get done. We need to have this town meeting as scheduled in the format that it is going to go forward in. And apparently, it's going to go forward in an in-person format. And I think, unfortunately, the moderator needs to come around to that line of thinking. I say that as somebody in a position that was appointed by the moderator and could be removed by the moderator, should he choose to do so. I will point out in the statute that he is citing, Mass General Laws, Chapter 39, Section 10, and if the chair would give me the leeway to read that statute into the record so everybody knows exactly what the operative clause is that he's relying on. Whenever the moderator determines that voters are being excluded from the town meeting because there is no room for them in places provided, or that voters in attendance are being deprived of the opportunity to participate therein for any reason whatsoever, he shall either, on his own motion, recess the meeting for any period during the day of the meeting, or after consultation with the members of the Board of Selectmen then present, adjourn the same to another date, not later than 14 days following the date of said meeting, when places and facilities sufficient to accommodate all voters attending and to enable them to participate therein shall be available. I will recite back to the chair's comments that it is only those members of town meeting that are in attendance rather, that are relevant that day. Folks that didn't come to Plymouth North because they were afraid and they couldn't participate are not relevant to this particular consideration. Further, I would point out that the moderator can only unilaterally recess to a point later in that same day, that the select board have to be consulted, according to the statute, to have this 14-day continuation. It says it right in the statute. After consultation with the members of the Board of Selectmen then present, adjourn the same to another date not later than 14 days. So the moderator, I think, is in error in relying on the fact that he can unilaterally postpone town meeting by these 14-day periods. I understand the moderator's position. I think that aspects of the virtual town meetings have worked well. I don't think it worked particularly well to cut their speaking time to 3 minutes and to prevent them from extending it and then having a 30-minute discussion about whether we were going to extend it or overrule it and all that. I don't think that was a particularly good use of everybody's time and effort. But I think that generally the town meetings have worked mostly well in a virtual format. But this meeting is clearly not going to go forward in a virtual format. It needs to go forward on the day that it is scheduled. There's too much relying on it. Members of this town need to rely on their legislature to be able to meet and not be held hostage by any particular person, any particular body. That is my personal opinion after having served on the Advisory and Finance Committee for the last 8 years. And I think it is imperative that we do everything we can to prepare for, execute, and have this town meeting on the date that is scheduled. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Ginny Davis. I'm a representative from Precinct 4. I've been a town meeting member over 16 years. I was a high school nurse for 26 years at Plymouth North High School. I want to bring out something that I realize may get missed. When people needed technical assistance, they were told to go to Plymouth North High School Library and wherever it was, and to have a teenager be their buddy. When I would come back to school every fall, I would get a cold. I would bring it home. I would get my immunizations, you know, I'd finally be fine. I would continue to bring colds home, but never get them the rest of the year. Teenagers and children carry stronger and different germs than we do. So that was really high risk to bring somebody who needed to sit really close to somebody and work on a computer. So this sort of doesn't make sense. We need to live with this. It's going to be with us forever, like the flu. And the school can be set up very safely. So anyway, just this is a little tidbit of common sense. Thank you.
Mr. Helm, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I was going to save my comments for discussion after the motion, but given what Ms. Davis just said and what Mr. Canty just said, I just need to point out right now what I was going to say. So it seems that we have been willing to create in-person solutions to technical concerns among technically challenged town meeting members, and with the possible consequences, as Ms. Davis just pointed out. Yet nothing has been done to create in-person solutions for an in-person meeting for town members concerned with COVID, which is basically one of the things that Mr. Canty was pointing out. And I think it's high time we dealt with this. In-person, Mr. Trifletti, in-person meeting and figure out a way to put the people who have concerns about COVID, you know, in a safe space, you know, and participate in town meeting. That is what you're charged with. That's what the residents want. And I think that it's high time after 6 town meetings that we start doing this. And I'd just like to finish with you know, a statement that was in the news today. Eric Chiaffi, the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources for our school district, talked about the return of normalcy after COVID restrictions. And he said, quote, "I think it's something we've all been looking forward to. I came here just at the start of the pandemic, and watching the progression to get back to what we've all wanted to be at has been a big relief," unquote. I think it's high time that town meeting follow that same path.
I'd like to make a motion to move forward with town meeting in person.
Second.
All those in favor? Charlie? You're muted, Charlie.
Yes.
Thank you. It is unanimous. Our October town meeting, annual fall town meeting, will be held in person. Okay, next up is our senior task force, and I see Mrs. Brady and the whole task force with her.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Madam
for
Chairperson.
joining us.
Of course, thank you for having me. It is truly my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Anthony, for all your assistance. I'm assuming I'm just going to press this forward or back. Good for me. Oh, there we go. Thank you again. I truly want to just start by saying I appreciate the Select Board voting to actually establish a senior task force because it's so necessary in our community. We are a strong committee. You will see mostly, for those that can see, in this room, just an amazing, amazing group of people who are part of this task force. So we're going to move on to hopefully something that is positive and we all can agree on, which is the validity and the awesomeness of the senior task force. So I'd like to introduce you to the senior task force. Who are we? We are an incredible 17-person member who has been meeting every other week since November. That is the dedication. I certainly, as the Director of Elder Affairs, am in a paid position in my role. I do it with passion as well, but the people behind me and the people on this task force do it as a volunteer because they care, and they're experts in their field. So I did take a moment. I did the pictures just to keep you awake, so you had something visual to see. Harry Helm is our Select Board liaison. I am the chair of the Senior Task Force. Joanne Moore is the vice chair of the Senior Task Force. She is the Director of Elder Affairs, Director of the COA in Duxbury. And Steve Bulletin is our secretary, and you may know him from the Planning Board. I would like to quickly go through the other members so you do understand the professionalism that we have on this committee. Elizabeth Connell, known as Betsy Connell, is the interim executive director of the Massachusetts Association, let me get that for you, of Councils on Aging. She's in attendance. Nicole Long, executive director of Old Colony Elder Services. Sarah Cloud, director of clinical services for Beth Israel Deaconess. Karen Peterson, who is the manager of community benefits and community relations, Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, in attendance. Amy Naples, Executive Director, Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce, in attendance. Barry de Blasio, Town of Plymouth, Director of Community Resources, on Zoom, joining us. Captain Kevin Manuel, Town of Plymouth, Police Captain. Pat Acorn and Terry Mucci, Center for Active Living Advisory Board members. And owners of Senior Voices. Kathy Castagna is the Center for Active Living Advisory Board, Plymouth Planning Board, Master Plan Task Force. Kevin Hood, President of Hood Remodeling. David Hood, Certified Senior Advisor, Care Patrol. Sandra Smith, Senior Real Estate Specialist. And Cheryl Buttieri, MS Family Educator and Support Specialist. Why am I telling you all that? Because you have an incredible, incredible group. Because of your appointment of this committee, we've come together with purpose, with enthusiasm, with passion for what we're going to do for this town. What is the purpose? Why? What is the purpose and mission of the Plymouth Senior Task Force? To create a sustainable community blueprint of excellence that serves seniors. What does that mean? We've arrived. To designate Plymouth as a leader and model community for adaptable senior policy. To recommend senior policies to be adopted by the Plymouth Select Board and supported by town meeting and town administration. Why is this important? A senior-friendly focus is important to the fabric of our community, current and future residents. If I ended right now, I would simply say 40% of your town is 55 plus. There are 17 and counting 55 plus communities. We need to take care of our seniors because they're soon to be the majority. We are a desirable relocation retirement community. It's important. So what did the Senior Task Force want to focus on? We wanted to focus on 4 areas. When we started back in November, we said, what does this look like? What are our goals? We looked at community livability and transportation, senior communities and senior voices, our relationship between seniors and town government, and we looked at Plymouth becoming an age and dementia-friendly designation. That one stuck. We decided to focus our energy on becoming an age and dementia-friendly community. And the reason we did is because being designated an age and dementia-friendly community is endorsed by the World Health Organization, the White House, and Massachusetts legislature. But most importantly, it covers all the areas that we kind of looked at and said, what do we need to do here? We looked at housing, transportation, communication. We want our seniors to be able to look at you all, us, the town, and the community and say, oh, yes, they've heard us, they understand us. Social inclusion and participation. We just went through a heck of a time of social isolation. Our seniors were hit the hardest. We don't want that to happen ever again. Civic participation, public safety. You see a captain on this task force. You know, those are important pieces. What does an age and dementia-friendly community mean? What's the purpose of it? Well, it focuses on a comprehensive needs assessment to really decide what your town does want. It looks at economic development, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's reflective of our residents. Carver's different, Kingston's different. Every town in this Commonwealth is different. We're unique because we're Plymouth. We have longevity, our economy. 40% of Plymouth is 55 plus. It needs to have a deliberate recognition of the distinct Plymouth villages. We're as proud of North Plymouth as we are of Manomet, as we are of South Plymouth. We need to recognize all of our villages. There's an enormous geographical footprint in Plymouth. We're huge, right? We're huge. Becoming an age and dementia-friendly community, there's no set requirements. We get to make it our own. But what does it look like? So what does an age and dementia-friendly community do? It improves communication between the town and elders. It bridges the digital divide. It combats social isolation, encourages inclusion, helps seniors age in place. This is a big one. We want our seniors, 40% of them and counting, to be able to stay in their homes if they so choose. How can we do that? We can partner with communities, Harbor Health, in the PACE program. If no one's familiar with the PACE program, that is right here, new in our community, and it assists seniors aging in place. Quickly, I'll read. The program of an all-inclusive care for the elders, 55 plus, for people age 55 and over who have the opportunity to live at home and qualify for nursing level of care. What PACE does is essentially has an entire team go to people's homes so they can stay there. So what am I showing you up here? Well, what I'm showing you is some facets of age and dementia-friendly communities. See the bench on the top? Simple solution. If you have seniors or elders that can't stand without assistance, you buy benches with a middle seat, with a middle arm, you get up. Mobility, simple. What else does it look like? Well, it looks like all the walking trails in the world that you have. We have over 40. It's a beautiful guide. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Plymouth has some of the most incredible walking trails. We put a banner, a rail on one of them, two of them, four of them. And seniors, intergenerationally now, can walk those trails with some assistance. We get education for emergency personnel, free. That is no cost because people need to be trained. Signage. That's what an intergenerational playground looks like, okay? It's healthy spaces and places for grandparents, grandchildren. Oh, I left out the D on grandchildren, sorry. And community members for all ages. It's a place where seniors can kind of work out, can rest, can watch their grandchildren. It's intergenerational. And finally, let me show you what it would look like for our businesses. Those are universal emblems. We are dementia aware, and Plymouth, I crossed out Wasaga Beach because we're not that. Plymouth is an age-friendly community for seniors. Please envision those decals in our local banks, our local restaurants, our local businesses, inviting seniors and those with dementia to feel safe in their community. It's super important. I want to leave you with one more example, the Purple Table. The Purple Table is a project that costs $0. But what it does is it allows those with dementia to maybe enjoy a meal that they might not have. So imagine, Charlie Butzer, someone calls East Bay Grill for a reservation, and they have somebody who wants to take their parent, their husband, their wife, their cousin, their sister, their brother, their child who has dementia out to eat because they love Plymouth, and it's a great community to do so. They call a restaurant and they say, I'd like to make a reservation for the Purple Table. Purple is the recognized color of dementia. And that waitstaff and that restaurant knows that someone's coming in with dementia. So they take just a little extra special step to ensure that maybe the table is away from noise or the full noise of a restaurant. Maybe they take a little extra step that they have that waitstaff be a little more patient. It's the little things that allow us to live so comfortably in this community. What does dementia in Plymouth look like? Not great. This is Plymouth residents only. In FY19, there were 8,310 inpatient discharges. From FY17 to FY19, 28% increase. ED, emergency department visits for those with dementia, 52% increase from FY17 to FY19. And did you know that BID Plymouth has an entire wing dedicated to seniors presenting with dementia and other cognitive disorders? What are we going to do to become age and dementia friendly? What's our first step? We need a comprehensive needs assessment. And this is really deciding and understanding what Plymouth seniors want. Not what seniors nationwide or in other towns want, but what Plymouth seniors want. We've reached out as a group to do our research and determined that the most authentic and professional way to have this done, and this is a requirement to become age and dementia friendly, is to do this through the Center for Social and Demographic Research on Aging Gerontology Institute, UMass Boston. They're the gurus. They've done over 70 of these. And to answer the question that you might have, how many age and dementia-friendly communities there are in Massachusetts, there are between 90 and 150 in active stages of doing what we're doing. But we're going to do it better because we're Plymouth. This will take 10 months. They will cooperate with all of us. I won't give you all the details. We'll cut through some of this. But I do want to share with you, I wanted you to have the information so you see. Basically, again, this study is to focus on what we want. So those 9 circle tenants that we saw, not all 9 of them might be applicable to Plymouth seniors. There's a really in-depth survey that's done. Okay? They look at 4 community forums to hear from residents of all ages. 3 focus groups are done to support the study. Up to 6 one-on-one interviews with town officials and other key informants. Looking at age 55, huge survey goes out to everyone age 55. There's written and web versions of a questionnaire to be used as this survey. They provide an electronic version of the report to Cal, as well as an in-person presentation of the findings of the report to Cal, the Plymouth Senior Task Force, the Select Board, and the community at large. It may come back that our seniors and those with dementia in Plymouth want to focus on 2 major areas. It would be at your choice to then decide what we tackle. There is a budget, of course. I'm not asking for that this evening. I just wanted you to be prepared. That the needs assessment is $35,000, includes all the elements of the age and dementia-friendly comprehensive needs assessment, and $15,000 for outreach in terms of making sure that we are able to tell all of our residents that this survey is coming, that we can have focus groups, that we can have meetings with stakeholders in this community. It's a community endeavor. So, this gives Plymouth the tools necessary to move forward and innovate. An age and dementia-friendly designation opens future funding opportunities for us. And I do want to share with you what that funding might look like. If I can find my notes, that is, excuse me. I think, Derek, when you had visited us, it was the community-based programs that were brought up in terms of what that might be helpful. There's funding available if you are an age and dementia-friendly designated community. What that looks like is it opens grant opportunities for the, there was a $1.1 million awarded for age and dementia-friendly communities for open spaces and looking at revamping roads and sidewalks and things as such as that. And also there's opportunities, so if there are towns that are considered progressively forward and they're looking at age and dementia friendly and taking care of their senior residents, there are unique grant opportunities for that as well. What we envision, plan, and execute will be specific to the needs of Plymouth residents with input from all of us. Citizens, businesses, nonprofits. It's the one area where we all get to come together and decide, what are we going to do for seniors? What is our blueprint going to look like? How are we going to be a friendly community for elders and those with dementia? And I honestly think we will be leaders. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your support. And any questions that you may have, I'm more than happy to answer. But this is an amazing group behind me, so thank you for that. Thank you to you guys.
So I just wanted to say that Article 4 regarding this is on the agenda for next week. So we will take it up then.
Certainly.
And I appreciate you coming in front of us.
Of course.
And explaining everything. John, do you have something?
Michelle, great job.
Thank you.
To yourself and the whole committee.
Thank you.
And for years, I mean, whatever I can do, I've been a firm believer of whatever we can do to keep seniors in their houses for as long as possible is what society should be doing. I don't remember, I know that in September of 12, Plymouth North High School opened up. So I don't know if the senior center, the building you're in, opened up at the same time, or was it right around the same time?
2012, yes, December of 2012.
Right, so when you put those statistics up there, and I think it was 40% of the community is over 55?
Yes.
Okay, so a decade in, and we went from the bottom floor to the penthouse pretty quick with respect to the infrastructure that we invested in our seniors. So is it still sufficient to accommodate that growing population?
Do you have 2 hours?
No, he doesn't.
No. You know, we appreciate what we have, and that is the truth. And we certainly are very creative and crafty in making it work. There are deficits, though. There are areas that we absolutely cannot accommodate 40% of this town, both in physical structure and in staffing. But
okay. I'm just curious, because we're always in this state of talking about infrastructure, maintenance, modernization, new construction, and it's always a discussion that the board is having perpetually. And
I would love
it was
the
up and-
opportunity to later have further discussion on that.
Okay, you can schedule that through the
Okay,
chair.
great. I will.
We'll limit.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, we have special town meeting articles. Derek, I don't know if we have staff here that you'd want to move some of these along, or if you just want to go in the order that they're in.
We've listed all the articles for the board's consideration. Staff is here to answer any questions. So some of these articles are fairly simple, like the first article, for example. It's more of an administrative change.
Okay.
But we've listed them all just in case the board had questions, and staff, again, they're available to answer any of those questions.
Do any of the board members have any questions about any of these articles? If you'd like, I could read them into the record, just to put them in there. So, Article 12, amend Center for Active Living Meals on Wheels revolving fund. Article 16, amend bylaw Chapter 132-1 plastic bag ban definitions. Article 17, amend bylaw Chapter 132-4 plastic bag ban enforcement. Article 18, transfer parcel off Billington Street to Agricultural Commission. Article 10, amend zoning bylaw lot regulation. Article 11, amend zoning bylaw use table. Article 13, retirement board COLA. Article 1, withdrawn. Article 2A, supplemental budgets. Article 2B, supplemental budgets enterprise. Article 5, pavement management stabilization fund. And Article 14, nor'easter storm funding. And all the information we have back up in our packets. Did they pull 18?
That's it. I think they did.
Oh. And they withdrew 18, correct?
That's right. I was withdrawn
Okay.
this morning.
Does anyone have any questions on those articles? Oh, sorry.
I do. I have a request that I see that Mr. Stone is in the audience, and if he might quickly review so that we have the information, but so that the residents who are tuning in might hear what is being suggested in Articles 16 and 17, and also Articles 10 and 11. Lee Hartman is here, and I think that the residents might like to hear what is being proposed. So if they did not tune into the planning board the other day.
Go ahead, Derek.
If I could, so those are great suggestions. If there aren't any questions for the other articles, it's getting late, and I would appreciate if staff could go home if there are no other questions. For the other articles that haven't been mentioned, Selectman Helm has already mentioned 4 articles he'd like to discuss.
Do you have anything, John?
Yeah. I thought we would have gone through them one at a time as they were listed on the docket, but certainly the finance director, I would like to, I'm hoping, Article 13, just a little synopsis of what's going on there. You have to get into the 2A and 2B with respect to the budgets, and I do had a couple of questions on Article 5, the Page Management Stabilization Fund. And
Okay.
you said 18 was pulled, so
So I haven't heard any questions relative to Article 12 regarding the revolving fund or Article 14, the nor'easter storm funding.
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
Why don't, can we just run through these one at a time?
Derek, when the finance director comes up, I mean, certainly she can comment on the Article 14 also. Put that under.
Yeah. I mean, I know that Center for Active Living, Meals on Wheels, and I believe that's Meals for the Seniors. But I do have a question, just, do you actually serve meals there on a daily basis for the residents? I know some other towns too, and
So the change in the revolving, that's an existing revolving, and we're adding to it because we're opening the Cal Cafe, which we always serve meals. We served one meal, a single meal, congregate, and now we are evolving to offer choice for seniors. So different menu items, different price points, and staying open longer so there's more opportunity for socialization while breaking bread. So,
thank you.
thank you.
I'll move approval.
Second?
Discussion? Nope. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
What time you woke up? Thanks, Charlie. Article 16. On Article 16, I just have a question. I was there, and I believe maybe John was. We had a plastic ban years ago, and how does this differ from what we already have on the books? Or why is this coming back to the board of the town?
Good question, and that's primarily why I'm here. I won't go through all of that,
Okay,
just to
that's
save
fine.
time for you all. When we put the plastic bag ban in, the standard at the time, in terms of how we defined a carry-out reusable bag, was, among other things, that it was 3 mils thick. The idea of that was that it would be too expensive to manufacture and then distribute a bag of that thickness for free. And that, in turn, would lead stores to charge the dime that they've been charging, Market Basket, et cetera. And that would predispose people to move toward paper or a truly reusable bag. And that's been a resounding success. I had a video on that. I won't go into all of that. But it's been a great success. We've eliminated, based on industry predictions of how many bags come out of supermarket, et cetera, we've eliminated approximately 18 million disposable bags coming out of just the supermarkets alone in just Plymouth. 52,000 a week that breaks down to. If you add in the big box stores, we're talking about 25 to 30 million bags. So we've eliminated that litter, and as the video would have shown, many people are moving to the reusables. The problem is that after we passed our bag ban, and And by the way, after we passed ours, every town on the South Shore used ours and passed them as well. There's now bag bans in 3/4 of all the towns in the state. The majority of people are living under bag bans. People saw that it was a good idea. So over 4 million people, Boston, Worcester, Springfield, Lowell, Brockton, all the big towns have done it as well. But what started to happen after we passed our bag law is certain businesses began giving those bags away for free, which is a disincentive for people to move to the other kinds of bags. The first response of towns to that came after us was to pass a bylaw that said, well, we'll go to 4 mils. That didn't work either. Then some folks in Rhode Island, at a town in Rhode Island, came up with a very elegant solution. And their solution was to say, let's go with a definition of a carry-out bag that is sewn and with stitched handles and not fused ones. That effectively eliminates those bags, the ones that are being given away for free, or even the ones that are being sold for a dime. And by the way, Rhode Island now, the entire state is, has a bag law that does that. Towns after us, when that idea came along, began passing bylaws with that definition. Kingston is the last town on the South Shore to have passed a bag ban. They used that definition. And that was the definition that was on proposed state bylaws. We didn't feel like we needed to do anything here in Plymouth for some time, but I brought some bags with me. Big Lots has begun to give these bags away free. Walmart has begun to give these bags away free. Pet Supplies Plus has been giving these bags away free when they run out of paper bags, which seems to be happening a little more often than perhaps it should. And I just got the bag they're giving away free, and in fact, it doesn't even match our 3 mil regulation. The concern is that this is a leak in the dam, and that if these stores, especially stores like Walmart, begin to give these bags away free, other stores are going to follow suit, and we'll very quickly be back to where we were before we had the bag ban that's in effect today. Towns that have had this bylaw, not new ones that are passing it with that, are now putting forward amendments like this one in their towns. Newton has done this, Brookline, Millis, towns are doing this to stop that flow. We don't want to go back to the position where we had the amount of litter plastic bags that we had before. And if you talk to anybody who does the cleanups, those bags are gone. We don't want to slip back into that situation. So that's the rationale for 16. And I don't know if you want to hear the rationale for 17, but that's 16.
But what I'm just trying to define the difference between the previous bill that we have, and so if I'm understanding you correctly, some of the stores are using the plastic bags but aren't charging for them.
Correct.
Okay.
And
so my only concern in this is, like, if they can't have paper, they use the plastic. Post-COVID, I can tell you, being in business, the supply chain is really spotty and bad for everything.
Mhm.
I mean, do I know how it might apply to this? I don't. But if it applies to this like it does anything else, parts for your cars, your vehicles.
Okay.
We can't rent trucks with refrigeration units. I mean, to
So-
order a truck now is 22 years away, or we can put it in and get a truck delivered to us. So, I mean, I don't want to put forward something that they might not be able to comply with.
Well, I would suggest that's not the case. Currently, this is the kind of bag that would be required. Stop and Shop has these 2 for $1. They got a ton of them. If you go into Job Lots, which is giving away those bags, they have a wall of these kind of bags for sale. I bought this bag at Market Basket. This is a phenomenal bag, $1.50. It has a zipper, it has insulation, it feels like a piece of Samsonite luggage. There's been no shortage of these kinds of bags that would be required. They've been there right along, and they're there in the stores in great numbers currently. I don't foresee that as a problem.
And who's going to enforce this? I see this is the article after this, enforcement,
The enforcement will stay the same. Basically, nothing changes about,
so no enforcement.
no, that's not true. There's
Well,
been
who's enforcing it right now?
the Board of Health. And
The
there's
Board of
been a
Health.
couple of first off, there's been no fines levied whatsoever. Why? Because like in almost every town that has these bylaws, stores comply, okay? There have been 2 or 3 that did not. They were given a warning, and they, within a day, were able to get the proper bags in. So there's no shortage either. But the Board of Health is enforcing it. The change that we're doing in that one is the person who wrote that was sloppy, and I can say that because I wrote it. The thing that it talks about is that a fine for the first offense will be this, the second offense will be this, so forth and so on. But it didn't give parameters for what constitutes an offense. So is the first offense 1 day and then till whenever you get your bags back in? Is it a first offense this year but a second offense next year? So we're just adding a sentence that is also the one that was in the state bylaw. And basically what it says is that each day will be considered an offense. So first day, a warning; second day, $50; third day, $100; and then $200 every day after that. And again, whenever a warning has been given, businesses have been able to get the bags in within 24 hours. So nobody should ever end up with a fine. But this clarifies that. It takes any ambiguity out of it. And if somebody did have trouble getting bags, most do not, they could appeal to the Board of Health, who are the enforcers and regulators. And if they needed a few more days, they could probably get it. But it certainly makes it have a bit more teeth in terms of somebody really delaying or going a long time. So that's the only change to that. These are minor changes to what exists, but important changes, especially in terms of things slipping backwards.
I applaud the effort, but I don't know if I can go as far as, making people pay for bags at checkout, especially with most of your big superstores now going to self-checkout. You take a small business like my own, since Plymouth banned the bags, we totally banned them. We don't carry any bags, we give you a box, and most of the people, after they know that, bring their own bags. I mean, so that part, I'd rather see myself, you enforce and strengthen the bylaw we have now, but to make another project and a few more steps at a cash register when people are aggravated as it is, because nobody likes to wait. And that's what I see. I see aggravation for them. I see a lot of aggravation for whatever business it is, trying to keep track of all that. Is just simplify it, for my support, and, hit them with a fine. I don't know if you can, do we as a community have the right to set our own rates for?
No, we do not.
Okay, so that's part of the problem right there.
Yeah, that's a state law.
But I just am not in favor, I'm in favor of everything except charging individual residents a fee for bags. I don't think that's.
Well, if I can interject, people are already paying the fee at 10 cents for the plastic bags that are available in all the markets.
Well, if they are, then what are you here for, then trying to change?
Well, again, what I said is that because some are starting to give it away free, others will eventually follow suit, and we'll be back where we were, where plastic bags are being given out in large numbers, and we'll be back having the litter everywhere. And as for the small businesses, we wrote into that bylaw an exclusion for small businesses like yours. So if you wanted to give away plastic bags, you could. But the big businesses that give away more in a week than any small business gives away in a year will still be having to do what they're already basically doing. They know how to do this. It's not going to be a hardship for them. And if you want to see my video, the vast majority at places like Market Basket are using paper or bringing reusables. Very few are taking those bags. But if they're given away free again, everybody will be taking them.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Stone, nothing in these two bylaw changes prevents people from, businesses from using paper bags?
No, not at all.
And they're free?
And those are free. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, the concept here is that large corporate businesses have been kind of getting around the disposable bag law by using a heavier grade of plastic that was not anticipated that they would, and then giving it away for free.
Exactly.
Okay. So essentially, what we have are the largest users or largest businesses giving away plastic bags have found a way around our plastic bag ban.
Correct.
And the intention of these two articles is to correct that.
Correct.
And you are telling us that most communities are in the process or already have corrected that loophole?
There are communities that are in the process, and anyone that has passed a bylaw more recently is using this definition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bring it back to the board.
Go
ahead.
I'd like to motion that we recommend Articles 16 and 17 to town meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
If I may, one correction. I think the article that you have that was presented to you a week ago, there are two minor changes to it that couldn't get to you by the time this came before you. And they're minor, but they're important. And the ones that'll actually go into the article, do you have the copies in front of you?
You know what, we can't, Derek, do we need to reschedule these? Because nobody, if there's changes on what was proposed?
I'm going to defer to the assistant town manager, but from what I understand, these changes were minuscule in nature.
Okay.
So if you want to just present them quickly,
Yeah, that's
so
what I
the board
wanted to
knows what
do.
your changes were.
Yeah. So basically, one of the stipulations was that if it's a plastic bag, that it be non-toxic plastic other than polyethylene or polyvinyl chloride. I eliminated polyethylene. Basically, that was because when I put this together, I was actually thinking about polyethylene terephthalate, which is toxic. Polyethylene itself is not, and many of these bags are made out of polyethylene, so that was an error, took that out. And then in the last sentence, it said that these plastic bags generally be considered a food-grade material that is no more than 4 mils thick. Now we're having it say no less than 4 mils thick. Makes it a little clearer, and that's what's the language, no less than, in the last bylaw. And many of these bags are 4 mils thick, so, and they're fine, they're very sturdy. So those are the two minor changes. Everything else, and especially the idea of sewn and stitch, stays the same.
Okay. Anyone? No more discussion? Do we have a vote? All those in favor? Charlie?
Yes.
Opposed? It's 4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, so we want to hear about the zoning bylaws, correct?
I think
And
the resolution.
how about if we take the retirement board? We see Mr. Retirement Board in the audience. We don't want him getting too tired.
So I'm before you tonight, Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance, Vice Chair of the Retirement Board. Two members also with me tonight, Dale Weber and Robert Ness. And we would like to present to you an Article 13, which is an article to increase the the COLA base for retirees. In 2010, the legislature enacted a law to allow by local option towns to increase the COLA base. And what the COLA base is every year we vote a COLA at the retirement board, no more than 3%. So the 3% gets added to that base every year to our retirees. So back in 2011, we increased it from $12,000 to $14,000, and now we're coming before you to increase that base from $14,000 to $16,000. So basically what that means is it's an increase to a retiree of $60 a year, $5 a month. We have approximately 763 retirees, so on an annual basis, that's a cost of $46,000 for that additional $2,000. Some other information that might be useful to you is currently right now, the average pension for a retiree in Plymouth is $27,601. So this addition, I think, is needed for our retirees, and especially, I think tonight we talked about how important our seniors are, and I think our own retirees deserve this. So we would kindly appreciate your support.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Quintal?
So just so people watching and make sure I understand this, this isn't coming from the taxpayers or the general budget. This is actually coming from the retirement fund, correct?
It comes from the retirement fund. So the town pays into the retirement fund on an annual basis, the appropriation, but it would be coming from that retirement fund.
Okay. That's it for me.
Anyone else?
Motion to approve as presented.
All those in favor?
Aye.
4 in favor and 1 abstention. Okay. Zoning bylaws. Oh, Lynn, I'm sorry. Do you want to just go
Yeah,
through all your
if there were
stuff?
any other questions regarding, so the other articles that I have tonight are Article 2A and 2B, which is the supplemental budget article for the general fund under 2A, and then under 2B is supplemental budgets for each of the enterprise funds. We gave you some detailed explanations and memos from the departments of what increases and adjustments were required. But if there's any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Does anyone have any questions on 2A and 2B? Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Article 5, Pavement Management Stabilization Fund. So what we're asking for here is to just transfer from free cash that amount of motor vehicle excise receipts that we received in excess of our budget for fiscal '22.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Mahoney?
Lynn, could you, so when you say the budget, you put together a process in 2017 by which we're only allowing, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Idaho excise tax to grow in the general fund by roughly a 1.25% a year.
That's correct.
Where over the prior 20 years, it had averaged 3% growth.
Yep.
And we're trying to take that, cull off that delta of 1.75% and use that to repay the money that we've been using, that town meeting has been giving the DPW director to improve our roads.
That's correct.
Okay. So the question I have, and it's probably best for the DPW director, but I'll ask it to you and certainly to the town manager. He's gotten three $5 million allotments, correct?
That's correct.
So FY 17, 19, took 21 off because of the pandemic, and he came back, what, a few months ago and got his third one, correct?
Yes.
All right, so, I'll ask this to the town manager. The question is, we were told in 2017, because we got desperate, there was a $135 million exposure that if the DPW director wanted to go out and instantaneously fix all the roads and bring them up to I think an 80% level of safety, he needed $135 million. So I guess my question would be, with the two and soon-to-be third $5 million investment in roads, are we treading water? Is our exposure still 135? Have we made a dent in that? Is it now trending downwards and it's lower than that? Or with inflation, for example, it's really, we are fixing some of our roads, but the exposure is really now 140, 150, 160. It's still growing. So is it still growing? Is it trending downwards? Or are we just staying neutral? That's my question. You don't have to answer it now. Unless, of course, you know the answer.
No, I don't. I know we just recently, I think they actually are updating the roads, evaluation program that they did way back in 2017. So I would think, we would have that information for you. I don't know if we have it right now, but get it to you shortly.
Yeah, we can get you an updated to the road rating. I think that's what you're referring to in the pavement management program. There's a road rating. I don't know what the road rating was in 17, but I think.
But I want it to equate to dollars. You know, does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I want to know if are we still layering more debt on future generations, or is this? And I know this is making a difference. Trust me. If anybody ever drove down River Street a decade ago, you'd know what I'm talking about. And we're finally proactively investing in roads. But I want to know that if we're not making a dent in it and the number's still growing, then what do we need to do? What's the number we need to give to the DPW director every 2 years incrementally to get that number to start trending down? That's the question. That would be the second question. And then the question I'll have, one more question I'll ask you, Lynn, is that, so this system that you set up in 2017, is it working? This payment plan, this bucket?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and it's in the near-term future, it's sustainable with respect to paying back those?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So, do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
And the last one I had is that nor'easter funding.
Yep.
It's just that storm from last October, what we have left. We recommended to transfer from free cash, pay that off.
Okay. Great.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
And now we have Mr. Hartman. A quick explanation.
So I'll go through these fairly quick. If you want quick, let me know if I should slow down. So we have two articles, and the first thing you're very familiar with, it's the goals of the Board of Selectmen, and one of the goals you have is to encourage strong and vibrant economic development in business sector. So we have two articles we're presenting to town meeting. I should point out that both of these were supported last week by the Planning Board, this one on a 3-to-1 vote, and the next one on a 4-0 vote. So we have in Plymouth what's called a unified complex design that we do in the industrial park. So we've done over 20 of them. It's been in place for a couple decades. It's been a very successful process that we use. So what happens is that it gives you the ability to put multiple buildings on a lot. And as long as the planning board decides it's a unified complex, you can do that. It's worked really well. It's kind of crazy to think that you can build a 40,000 square foot building by right, but if you did 220s, you need a special permit. So again, this has worked really well in the industrial park. I have some examples I'll show you. And what we're looking to do at this town meeting is expand this unified complex, allowing multiple buildings on a lot without going through with the Board of Appeals, adding it to the airport district, mixed commerce, highway commercial, and Cedarville Enterprise District. You know the airport, basically the airport district is basically the airport itself with some areas just to the north of South Meadow Road. Mixed commerce is Colony Place, as well as the area where Amazon is, and a little other additional land on Cherry Street. Highway commercial is Home Depot Drive and Shops at 5 Natalie Way. And Cedarville Enterprise District is that land located on Hedges Pond Road, just north of the old landfill. So it's applies just, it's decided by the planning board if it's unified. It's only for structures. So if you have a use like retail that needs a special permit, you still need that special permit. If it's aquifer protection, you still need this. This only allows for multiple buildings. And again, we've done this a bunch of times. One of the things I've been asked to do for town meeting is present consistency with our current master plan. I won't go into this, but again, we give some of the reasons in maximizing development in the limited commercial land we have is one of the goals of the master plan. And I just had some examples here. So this is the medical building on Resnick Road. It says Christie McAuliffe, but that's really Industrial Park Road. And this was a unified complex proposed with an addition to that medical building as well as the daycare that's next door to it. Another unified complex, I think we all know, Registry of Motor Vehicles. So this is up on the top right of the screen is the Industrial Park Road, and you've got the registry building plus 3 additional buildings, 2 office buildings, and Map Academy to the rear that we've used unified complex on. This is, if you're coming off of Plimpton Road or coming from the Market Basket heading down on Commerce Way towards the Colony Place, these are the 2 medical office buildings right on Commerce Way, just off of Plimpton Road. The third one that's there was proposed but not yet built. This is a building, this is the old, I call it the Bartlett Nuclear Building. And again, this allowed for an addition to the existing building on the right. This is Industrial Park Road, and allowed them to separate those 2 buildings on separate lots. And then the last one, I believe it's the last one, is again, Resnick Road up on the hill, the medical building, and the new medical office building at 41 Resnick Road. So again, great tool. None of these would have been able to happen without a lengthy special permit process. It's worked well, and we would recommend, and we ask for your support on this, to expand it to these other commercial districts. Thank you. Fast enough?
No, that was too fast.
I can go back.
Do you have a question, John?
Yes. So Lee, you just, again, that was too fast. So the last thing you said was, none of that could have happened without the lengthy special permit process?
Right. So if you want to build a 40,000 square foot building, so if these, for example, this one here, if these 2 buildings, 45 and 41, were together, attached, you could do that and get your permit, and the uses are allowed. Only because they're separate buildings do you have to go to the Board of Appeals and say, I want to build 2 separate buildings that are not attached, and it's on the same lot. And our bylaw says to do that, you need a special permit. So what this is saying is whether it's one 40,000 square foot building or 2 20s, you should be able to do that without going through that whole process just to build the building. Now, if you have a use in there that triggers a special permit, for example, retail or some other use that needs a special permit, you still need the special permit for the use. This only just allows you to put multiple buildings on the lot. And again, as I pointed out, where I had it, we've done it over 20 times in the industrial, in the industrial park as well as in Camelot Drive, and it's worked very well.
Anyone else?
Madam Chairman, Chairwoman.
Yes.
Yeah, Lee, great job. I hope town meeting supports this. This is very important for what we're trying to do and make it easier for these, businesses to come in here, and grow in Plymouth. So it's a great start. Thank you.
I will also point out for both of these articles, one of the other things we're seeing in Plymouth is more and more desire to build 40Bs on our commercial land. So I think in both of these articles, we're trying to give property owners every incentive to do commercial development and not simply convert more land to yet another 40B in this town.
Yep. Great job, thank you.
I'd like to move that we recommend Article 10 to town meeting.
10
I'll
and
second.
11.
Well, I think 11's separate, so we'll have Lee explain it. So let's just do 10.
Discussion?
Lee, does this include Scobie Circle?
Yes, it does.
That's all
All those in favor?
Sorry, Ms. Chairwoman.
Aye.
Lee, sorry.
Hold on, Charlie.
So, Lee, when you look at page 1 here for Article 10, I think you put the packet together, the backup data?
Yes.
So it says need and justification.
Mm-hmm.
This goal seeks to increase the town's commercial tax base and shift some of the community's tax base burden away from the residential taxpayer. So I want to promote economic development that is sustainable, that is focusing on good-paying, long-term jobs. You referenced 40B. We could talk about brick and mortar. We've had these conversations over the years. Brick and mortar retail is going the way of the dodo. I had this conversation with Mr. Cole. The focus should be on getting industries or businesses to this community that will put down sustainable jobs where people can live here. And that, obviously affordable housing is a different piece of the puzzle. That's a conversation for another time. But, where in theory, they're not traveling up to 128 or into the city to go to work. And they have this quality of life where they're here.
In just about every case, retail would still trigger a special permit through the zoning board. So this is office space, this is manufacturing, this is warehousing. Those are the uses that are allowed. Special permit uses such as retail would still be a special permit use.
But it is mathematically impossible to shift it away from the residential base, okay?
I think it says to minimize, but yes.
And it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that, the paragraph I'm looking at, so. The Plymouth Industrial Development Corporation was founded in 1962. You have a phenomenal example of sustainable jobs. You talk about the industrial park in North Plymouth, hundreds of companies and thousands of sustainable jobs. The tax base between Camelot and North Plymouth Industrial Park is only $230 million. And we've added about $10 billion, now that I've seen the updated numbers from the finance director, in the last 50 years of residential. You've got another $2 to $5 billion of residential in the queue over the next 2 decades, and I think the focus really should be on sustainable jobs, sustainable businesses, and that's just not going to happen. I just don't want to plant the seed of, whether you can call it misleading, it's just inaccurate. It's not going to happen, so. And we want to be welcoming to businesses, and there's a bunch of things we need to do to facilitate that, but that's it.
Well, I'll just say that I'm in total disagreement with Mr. Mahoney on this. I think that this will bring better paying jobs. Right now, the average salary, the average wage for somebody working in Plymouth is $20 an hour. Okay. Mr. Hartman has mentioned that those types of jobs would require a special permit. Okay, so what he is proposing here is not about $20 an hour jobs. It's about those types of jobs that you're talking about. And I understand that you don't believe that it is impossible to turn the tide of what Plymouth is becoming from a residential area. I understand you believe that. I tend to believe that we can, that through this and other methods, we can prevent that future that you see with all of this residential development, because we must do it. So I disagree with the tenor of what you said. because I do think things are possible. I do think it's possible to turn that, to stem that tide, and I think this is part of it, along with Article 11.
Hold on.
No, go ahead. Was he going to say something? I think it's a great idea. We've been doing it for a while. And the way I see it is you're using the property till it's full. I mean, the town doesn't want to go up. Well, they haven't in the past. The town has no really commercial space or industrial park to speak of. So I'm in favor of this. And I've seen it in the exact park I'm in, and it works beautifully. You touched on a few of them. And if the town can get some more tax dollars that way, you know, and I agree with you, John, it's not our way out, but you know what? Every little bit helps. And I'm going to support it. Well.
Any other questions? Or, well, go
Yes.
ahead, Charlie.
So this is, as I said, this is a start. We need to get height restrictions to go higher too, to help us with this also. But every time we add light industrial commercial, it's going to take a little bit off of the residential taxpayers. That's the point that Lee is making. And we have to make this process easier for these businesses to come in. And the areas you're talking about, you're not going to get the $20 an hour jobs. These are office buildings, which are going to be higher paying jobs. And, you know, we don't want a situation where we had it at Home Depot, we had it at Colony Place where they went to 40Bs because the permit process was so hard for them to get their commercial in. So they went to a 40B residential. And that's, I think, the point Lee is trying to make. And this is a start and in the right direction. And I just hope town meeting passes these articles.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, so 3 affirmatives, 1 abstention, and 1 no. All right, Article 11.
So the next one, and just I'll go into a little bit before. So we have some uses here that we're looking to convert from special permit to allowed uses. I'll go through each one. But one of the things that's important to point out, and it kind of applies to the last one too, is that a special permit process takes 2 to 5 meetings on a regular basis. You have to go for a special permit before the planning board, before a steering committee, sometimes 2 steering committees, and then to the zoning board of appeals. And each time you go to one of these meetings, you have a legal team or a team with you. You have an attorney, an engineer, landscape architect, an architect, and sometimes other specialists too. So this special permit process tends to be fairly expensive. I was asked to get some examples in Plymouth. I'm told the average cost to go through that process is between $50,000 and $75,000. In larger cases, legal fees alone could cost between $10,000 and $30,000. Sometimes on the complicated cases, it can easily exceed $100,000. Engineering, $40,000 to $100,000 on a larger case, and easily can go over $200,000 on a complicated case. This is just to find out whether or not you have yes or no. So I'm coming to the town, I think I have a good project, I'm going to go through a process, and I'm investing this kind of money just to find out whether I can put a shovel in the ground or not. Many people go through it, a lot go through it, but it also, for certain uses, I believe the ones I'm about to show you, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. So we have some changes we're proposing. They're uses that already exist in most cases in each of these zoning districts, and they're uses that, in my opinion, and I'd say the planning board's opinion since they've supported this also, is that the conditioning that you can do with a special permit, there's limited value to it for the uses that we're talking about. And then, again, like last time, non-retail. Retail is not the focus here. We have plenty of it in the town. You want to do retail, you need that special permit process. And just to give you an example of how we got here. So people say, well, why are we changing all of this? So this is the old zoning bylaw we had before we went to the new table. And this is just one example. In the R20 SL district, it says The uses you can use, a two-family use and all uses allowed in the R40 district. So now you go back to the R40 district, and the R40 district says all uses allowed in the in the R25 district. Now it goes said to the R40 district, and all special permit uses that are allowed in the R40. So now you go back to those districts, and they will say, here are the uses allowed. Oh, and now you have to go back one more set to the RR district to see which use is allowed. So when you took that kind of complicated cross-referencing and put it into our table, you could start to see how things just, as we've worked with this new table, just don't make sense. So we have a handful of changes that we're proposing, and again, things to try to encourage commercial development in the town. Right now, a prohibited use in the airport district is boat sales. It's already there all over the district. It was allowed under the old bylaw, but again, when you look at the table now, it says prohibited. That means you can't do it, period. You can't do it even by variance. So again, we're recommending converting that prohibited use of boat sales to an allowed use in the airport district. And I would also point out in the community with 37 miles of shoreline and 365 ponds, it's a very important part of our economy to have that marine-related uses in the community. Banks, financial institutions, prohibited arterial commercial. That's the Stop and Shop Plaza on Samoset Street, Pilgrim Hill Road, where Rockland Trust is. Right now, you can't do it. It's prohibited. So again, looking to allow for banks, once again, as they were before we did the new table, from prohibited to an allowed use arterial commercial. Special permit right now for a bank in the light industrial district. Again, this is a very low impact type use in the community, looking to make it an allowed use in light industrial. It's prohibited also in the airport district, which is very similar. It is really a light industrial district. So again, making an allowed use in the airport. And in mixed commerce, which again is where Colony Place is, it's a special permit, and we're recommending to convert that to an allowed use too. And again, banks are low impact use in the community. Pilgrim Hill Road, again, I think you're familiar with these. I'll probably walk through them more with the Finance Committee. We have the two industrial parks, Camelot and North Plymouth. Marine yards, again, just like marine sales, prohibited, under no circumstances allowed in the light industrial district or the airport district. But yet, when I go to both of those districts, I see that use everywhere. So it's a use that is or was previously allowed and should be allowed. So we're looking to convert that use from marine yards from prohibited to an allowed use in those two districts. Non-automotive, and again, non-automotive, is prohibited in light industrial and prohibited in the airport now. Again, both of those districts, you look at service facilities, they're all over those two districts. This one going from prohibited to special permit, not allowed. So this one now says that all of those uses can occur, but if you want to do a new non-automotive repair shop, it would be by special permit. Aviation uses are allowed in the airport district. For some reason, they're prohibited. Now, this is not flying a plane, but it's doing repairs and aviation-related industries, prohibited in the light industrial district. So we're just looking to mimic what's allowed in the airport district for aviation-related uses. Heavy equipment sales and services, right now, special permit in both the airport and industrial district. It's a good use. It's the type of use you need in your industrial parks. So again, recommending converting those from special permit to allowed uses. And then light industry, which is allowed in every other district except for mixed commerce, which again is Colony Place and Cherry Street. It's prohibited in our mixed commerce, but allowed in all those other districts. And definition, fabrication, processing, packaging, or assembly that employs electric or other noiseless or substantially noiseless, inoffensive motor power, utilizing hand and quiet machinery. So we're not talking about something that's some massive use. But again, another use to encourage besides retail development in our mixed commerce and besides 40Bs. Manufacturing of renewable energy. So this is not creating a wind turbine or creating a solar field. This is producing the material that you would then sell to somebody who would put those in. It's prohibited in our highway commercial, which is Home Depot Drive, Shops at 5, and Natalie Way, Holman Road. Prohibited, not allowed. It's allowed in every other districts. We're recommending making that instead of a prohibited use, an allowed use like it is in every other commercial district. Consistency with the master plan. Again, the goal here, give people some alternatives, encourage those uses, maximize the commercial land we have now, and again, minimize that process of the special permit process for uses that I would say are reasonable uses that should be allowed in each of those districts. So again, with that, I would ask for your support. Thank you.
John, do you have anything?
I'll move approval.
Excellent. Do we have
I'll
a second?
that.
Discussion.
All right, I got to clarify a few things from that last article's discussion. So I think there was some confusion. So the overall philosophy and the discussion I had with Mr. Cole, our Economic Development Director, was to focus on, and if you can put it back to that prior slide, Lee. Okay, so look at those last two bullet points. That's something that that's more along the lines of what I want to say. Maximize the value of your existing commercial zones, your existing industrial zones, your existing highway, commercial, light industrial. Okay, let's do what we can to streamline the process to make sure that maximizing that out. But we're focusing on industries that are going to, in theory, deliver long-term sustainable jobs. You can say what you want about that prior article, but at the end of the day, these developers go with 40Bs because that's where the money is. There's no doubt in my mind. They're making money. It's unfortunate that the town of Plymouth is at a bottleneck. If you look at the 3 towns below us, Bourne and a couple on the Cape, there's no land left. If you look at north of us, there's no land left. And I forget what the number is, but I think we're leading the state in new residential permits in the last year or two, Lee, correct? And it's well over 1,000, correct? So they're making money. They're not, and that's where the profit is, so that's why they go there. I don't want to belabor this point, but we can go into the diversification of the tax base. 3 months from now, Lee, somebody, an individual's last name is Dunn, will be standing at that microphone with a giant pie chart on that screen. And we then vote whether or not we want to go to a split tax base or keep the unified rate. And then she goes through all the numbers, and I've seen it a dozen times. It's really like watching paint dry. I think you've seen it a few times. So when those numbers get up on that board, they are stark. And I don't think, I know for 100% certainty that it is mathematically impossible to diversify the tax base. And even suggesting that we can is extremely dangerous and irresponsible. And this is why. Because you're implying, you're telling the public that the reason that their residential taxes are high is because you didn't diversify the tax base because you're anti-economic development. This town has so much development that has come into it in the last 50 years, it's not funny. And that's the problem. There's a misconception there, and it sows the seeds of doubt, and all it does in return is lead to higher taxes, larger government, and more debt. So I support this second article.
Okay. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Hartman.
Thank you.
As we move
Thanks.
along to the town manager's report.
All right, I know it's getting late, so I'll get through my 4-page town manager report as quickly as possible. So early voting is open until this Friday at the Great Hall during town hall hours. So we'll be closing early voting this Friday at noon. And so just to remind folks that the primary election day is September 6th, so this coming Tuesday, throughout the 18 precincts from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Moving on, as you may have heard, the concession stands at Forges Field had caught on fire this past week. As of this time, we are suspecting that there was an electrical fire that caused the event. We think it may be a fault, it may have been a faulty breaker. So more to come on that. We still have the fire investigation. The town is working with the league's insurance company to pay for the replacement of the building. Labor Day weekend will be the last weekend that we have staff, lifeguard staff and other beach staff at our beaches. However, Long Beach will be staffed by Marine and Environmental Affairs personnel through September 17th. We have been notified by the Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission that they will be voting on and presenting the police department with the reaccreditation on October 26th. So much credit to the chief and his command staff for going through the reaccreditation process. As of this school year, the police chief will be implementing 2 new school resource officers that will rotate through our 8 elementary schools. As you can imagine, school safety is the chief's top public safety priority. Another announcement with the police department, we have 7 new academy graduates. The graduation will take place this Thursday at Memorial Hall at 11 a.m. So again, adding 7 more police officers to our staff. Just as an aside, at the same time, we have 3 police officers that are transferring and 2 that are retiring. So we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. The planning department has identified all of the properties that face School Street from the rear, which have an excessive amount of graffiti. Letters will be sent at first to the property owners, alerting them the responsibility to remove the graffiti while we offer financial assistance from our community development grant program. Tomorrow, there'll be a contingent of staff and other partners in town that will be conducting a site visit in New Bedford with the American Cruise Lines. You may have heard that American Cruise Lines has recently come to the town and has expressed an interest in making Plymouth a future destination. So more to come on that. I know Chairman Cavaco attended the early meeting. On a personal note, I'd like to thank Phil Chandler, who's our Harbor Committee Chairman, for reaching out and making this connection with American Cruise Lines. So we're hoping, if things go well through negotiations, that we could see anywhere from 4 to 6 stops starting next summer here in town. And then last, I'd like to just mention that September 4th, we have the lighted boat parade that starts at 7:30 in the harbor. The parade will pass through the channel, pass by the boat ramp, town wharf, and then the state pier. Pending any questions, that's all I have for this evening.
Does the board have any questions for the town manager? Great. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is selectmen, open discussion, new business, letters, old business. The only, do you have anything? No. The only new business I have is that I was notified once again today, well, actually, it's old business. Fresh Pond is having difficulties there. I guess there was, I don't know exactly what happened, but I think that, and I see that Mr. Malaguti is in the audience, I think that it's time that we really take a hard look at what's going on for these ponds and beaches. Unfortunately, the Pond and Beach Committee has been stagnant. I don't know if it's time that we either disband it and start over, or we just move forward. I mean, people, our residents, we're too big to be catering to people outside of our town. And these ponds and beaches are the first ones that suffer for it. So if Mr. Malaguti wouldn't mind speaking?
Yes, Everett Malaguti, Chair of the Natural Resources and Coastal Beaches Committee. I 100% agree with that. I know that while we are big, I want to make sure that we try and cater to both sides as equally as possible, but emphasizing more on the residents more than the tourists, but not also hurting our major economy as well at the same time. I do agree there needs to be a major revamping of all the regulations for our beaches and ponds so that they're streamlined, but also maintain efficiency and that people aren't seeing different rules for one end of town to another end of town. creating the hopscotch effect that we've seen over the past 1 to 2 decades of changing rules in one, so then everyone congregates to another one that has lesser rules. So I do agree with that. The Beaches and Ponds Committee, that obviously is the purview of the Select Board to determine if they want to continue that or not. I will happily lend assistance anywhere possible, as well as other committee members on my committee to assist them if needed. We are tasked right now heavily with Morton Park issues and are going to have another couple meetings within the next month to dive deeper into the issue to hopefully resolve that before the next season comes about, so that we're not playing catch-up again. And obviously, while Morton Park is the large issue at the moment, it's not forgotten about the other major entities that we have for recreational opportunities.
Great. I know that I'm the liaison to the natural resource, your group there. So, and I'd be happy if you need anything, just let me know, and hopefully we can work together, because I just think it's time that we have to make a move and make sure everything is consistent across the board.
If I could, just so I'm clear, we've talked a lot about bringing together a committee this fall. We've had many discussions at the staff level and asking staff to support a committee. So I guess the question is, will the board make a decision in the future as to which direction? Is it going to be Everett's committee, or are you going to reinvigorate the Beaches and Pond Committee?
Well, like I said, I think the part that I'm concerned over is that the Beaches and Pond Committee is stagnant. I know that Chris had reached out to them, trying to set up a meeting. So I think everything should be under some sort of umbrella.
Right.
And I would think that would be the natural resource, group. So, and we can, appoint subcommittees and stuff like that under that one umbrella. But I know that, people are demanding change, and there's nothing that we can do to fix it unless we fix it all. So
No, and that's great to hear, because like I said, whether it's the police chief or Barry de Blasio or Ian, our recreation director, they're all interested in being a part of this conversation.
Absolutely.
So I just want to be able to move them in the correct direction. So we will definitely re-engage with Everett and support his efforts.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, I think the next, is there any?
I get old business.
Okay.
Derek, could you talk to Mr. Rabbit? And I'd like to get an accounting of the $15,000 that we're giving him for the 3 questions that he needs answered. At the last meeting, we talked about it, and if for the next meeting, I'd like to get what the 3 questions are that he needs answered that are going to take 30 hours and $15,000. And if we can get that, maybe at the next meeting when Mr. Cirkey's here, because he'll be at our next meeting, maybe Mr. Cirkey can tell us if we're getting money's worth, on these 3 questions. So if that's possible to do, I'd like to get that for next meeting.
Just so I'm clear, Mr. Bledsoe, you're referencing the Charter Commission's request for
The Charter
our council.
Commission, they said they're consulting, couldn't answer 3 questions, and they recommended they get a legal opinion on 3 questions. And I questioned them to, if how many, because it's only a few questions, seems like a lot of money. So, and so I'd like to see what those questions are, to see the complexity of those questions, and then get an accounting of how that money is being spent or has been spent.
Understood. I can circle back with Mr. Abbott, the chair of the committee, and ask him that question.
Yeah, then maybe Mr. Cirkey might see it on the agenda, and maybe he can weigh in on, because he likes to get up there and speak. So maybe he can get up there and speak about these 3 questions. So it'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for the town manager? Because I think the next is, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Quintel.
This was actually under the selectmen's business. On the two articles that Lee have, and I know John voiced his opinion on it, now I'm going to voice mine. Unless you've built a building in this town, or try to do a project in this town, then you understand what these developers, if you will, not even developers, business owners have to go through, and the hoops that they have to go through, and the coming back, and the coming back, and you have people telling you what kind of roof to put on your building. No, not that kind of roof, this kind of roof. And we want this, and we want, there has to be a limit. There has to be a balance. And Plymouth is not known as a business-friendly community. Whether it's a car dealership, somebody that's trying to build a storage facility off the old Nix Rock Road interchange, it shouldn't be such a difficult, long, drawn-out process. And when I have people that are going through this process that I do not even know, making phone calls to me and explaining what they have to go through. And, it's nice to hold a tote, but, I commend Lee a little bit for doing, that was some of our goals, I believe, from a previous year, speeding up the permit process, not to give the house away, but make it a little easier and a little less expensive. If there's a certain board or boards that want certain things, then how about like a little pre-meeting with them and go over it, and then come back next week, come back in 2 weeks, go to this board, go see them, then come back here. I think the big fault in this town is nobody looks at the zoning bylaws that we have on the books. We all sit here and we all complain, board after board, what the Water Street looks like, what this street looks like, what that street, but who's actually changing the zoning bylaws? Nobody. So, we're going to put a task force together and get all these people with these ideas. Why not conserve our energy together in correcting the problems that we do have? I mean, that's the way I see it. And I just, I had to say that because unless you've done it and you've had the architect with you and you had the lawyers with you, I used to tell them, stay home because I can't afford all this. And I bring one guy and just keep my fingers crossed. And, it worked, but it was very repetitive. And I just think we need to be a little more business friendly. Last week, I covered for somebody, and I had to meet somebody for an inspection. And the window was 9 to 12 or 9 to 1. Okay, so this resident requested a call maybe 30 minutes before the inspection. They don't do that. So in other words, you have to wait 4 hours at that location. Not only did he have to wait there 4 hours, okay, that's his house, but the contractor that did the actual work had to sit there. And me and him had a big conversation because this kid had to go to work and I covered for him. So I don't want to say too much about it, but it's things like that that are very difficult. Any homeowner doing any job, don't understand it, it's very difficult. And we've asked 100 times, and we have made progress, don't get me wrong, on simplifying the permit process, if you will. And you say that about the 40B, there's a lot of money in it? Well, there's 100 acres sitting on Long Pond Road. That's what I've been trying to avoid from day one. Do I say it publicly at this table? Absolutely not. But since we're talking about it, maybe that's some little of the driving force behind me that no one's ever asked. Nobody's taken the 3 minutes to ask me. And the 40B on where Home Depot is, whatever it is, Depot Drive, Dave Gilvire owned that property. That's one of the reasons I ran for this job, because I was very disgusted in what I saw there, and what I see there, I'm going to use the word horrified. So that's one of there was 3 reasons, and that was the biggest one. And I've been told all over that the town would not negotiate and work with the developer. And I know Dave Gilvar for here and there at different meetings, that's it, nothing special. Always a gentleman and always willing to, but that's the reputation and that's what happened, and that's why that went the way it did, and it was wrong. You should have tried, whoever was here should have tried to stop that and negotiate that. And that's what I'm trying to do, as long as my part here is on the board with the rest of us, on what happens on the 100 acres, because something is going to happen there. So, you know, I'm trying to stay level-headed, which I have been. Other people are all fighting about a racetrack. You put your energy in that. I think that's wonderful. I'm watching the bottom, the end result, what's going to be best for this town, and I'm going to tell you there's a traffic issue on Long Pond Road that has nothing to do with anything on that 100 acres, but it needs to be addressed, and that's what I'm focusing on right at the moment. So that's all I have to say. And, you know, I commend Lee for doing what we've kind of asked him to do the last year. I mean, we did, you know, that's all. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Mahoney.
I'm not going to counter that. I just, under old new business, the question was, because of the primary next week, is it true that we're meeting a week from Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we'll be meeting on the September 8th next week, so it'll be next Thursday. Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Everybody have a great week.
All right.